Chapter 10. There were voices in the wind, off and on all night. Ben had listened to them. The whispering, the faint, dry laughter, the chattering that sometimes sounded insane. As a little boy, he had heard these wind voices, and they had scared him. But his father had told him that the desert had to talk at night, that it was so silent during the day that it just had to break out into all this talk at night. Ben had never been afraid of the voices after that. He had slept all night, guarded against Medak by birds that had come at sunset to roost at the mouth of the tunnel. Every time Ben moved in his sleep, they fluttered and cried out, hustling away from him. At dawn, he had shot 6 birds, using only pebbles in the slingshot, saving the buckshot for a time when he might need the greater velocity and greater accuracy. He had plucked and cleaned them more efficiently than he had the others, and now they were lying out on a smooth, clean rock, the sun already beginning to cook them. Using water from the puddle, he had cleaned all the wounds he could reach and was pleased to see how fast they were healing. He had inspected his slingshot, examining the rubber tubes carefully to see that they were not beginning to break or wear at any place. His beard was now 6 days old, for he made it a practice not to shave during long trips in the desert. A beard helped protect his face from the sun. When he looked at himself in the surface of the water, his beard was very black and thick, and gave him a strange, satanic look. He looked dangerous. Ben had a pleasant sense of well-being as he sat down in the tunnel out of reach of Madek's gun and started practicing with the slingshot. His wounds only hurt when he moved carelessly. His arm only ached a little, and although he was hungry, he was content to wait until the carcasses became more appetizing. He was getting so good with the slingshot that he could hit within an inch of where he aimed at 30 feet. At 15 feet, he was accurate even with a stone. At 9, a 9-inch whiptail lizard came into view, and Ben threw a pebble at it to get it moving, and then nailed it on the run at 20 feet. He added it to his cooking birds, and then stopped for a moment and looked through his peek hole at Mayday. The man had pitched camp at the foot of the butte, getting the jeep in close to the breccia he had parked facing the butte and had put up the tent behind the jeep. The water cans were in under the awning of the tent, lined up in a neat row in the shade. Madak was doing something around behind the jeep. Ben could see his shadow moving. As he sat down against the fitted slingshot back into his hand, he knew that it was foolish to imagine that he was safe just because he had food and water and Madak could not shoot him. Madak would change that. He was locked to that man down to the desert. They were chained together. Perhaps a different man would have left the desert by now, sure that Ben could not make it out, but Madak would not do that. He would stay until he saw that his plan had been worked out to the last detail. Madak would not leave him here alive. As Ben sat going over in his mind what had happened since the first roar of the 358, a thought formed and became clearer and clearer until he realized that it was the only thing he could do. The chain between them was hundreds of feet long now, stretching from high up on the butte down to the steep side, across the breccia and smoother, sandier desert, and over to the jeep, locking at last to Medak. For me to live, Ben thought, that chain must be drawn shorter. It must be drawn in link by link until he and I are face to face. And somehow, when we come face to face, he must be as naked as I am. I cannot let Medak come to me, Ben thought. I cannot let him choose his place and his time and his method of coming. I must either go to him or I must pull him to me. Ben laid aside the slingshot and went over to a hole in the wall. Medak was walking toward the butte. He had the big gun slung over his shoulder and the coil of tow rope over the other, and was carrying a heavy canvas bag in which showed tools and gear. He's coming to me, Ben thought, coming at his choice of place and time and method. Disappeared from view as he moved in close to the wall of the butte. Ben went to the end of the tunnel and waited there, not exposing himself. The sound was clear but faint. Listening to it, he could almost see what Madak was doing down there. The canvas bag, there was a geological hammer with a flat peen on the end and a long rock-breaking spike on the other. Madak was down there at the foot of the butte, cutting a stairway up the side of it. The sound ceased for a moment, and then a new sound came up, clear and almost musical, the sound of metal hammering metal. Now he was driving a piton into a crack in the rock. For a moment, Ben wondered what Medak was using for a piton. Then he thought of the long steel pegs he carried in the case. He had to pitch a tent in stony ground with a high wind. With the rope secured to the tent pegs driven into the face of the wall, and with handholds and footholds hacked out of it, Medak was starting to climb the butte. Although he knew that Medak probably could not see him, Ben took no chances as he left the tunnel and went out on the wide ledge. Staying low against the far side, which rose in a smooth wall, he hurried along, noticing as he went how the ledge only slanted upward, but as narrowing. At last the ledge became so narrow that he could not walk on it, and a few feet farther on fared back into the escarpment. The escarpment was a wall of smooth stone and climbed outward. This leaning wall towered above him for more than 50 feet and formed, it appeared, the top of the butte. About 20 feet beyond where he stood, but above him, was another ledge, wide and slanting upward, an easy path to the top of the butte. No force in the world would hold him against that leaning wall enough to cross those 20 feet to the wide avenue of stone along the top. Nor was there any way a naked man with no tools could scale the escarpment. He was confined to this narrow ledge and the tunnel. He was imprisoned here, and Medak knew that. Ben could now see exactly what Medak was planning. About where Medak was, Ben remembered there was a smooth, unclimbable wall from the breccia to the ledge, about 30 feet up. Ben had studied the place longly, for once on that high ridge, it had looked to him as though the rest of the way to the top would be no more than a stiff walk. Without tools and rope, he hadn't been able to conquer the first smooth vertical obstacle. Medak had everything he needed. Ben studied the stone butte from where Medak stood. Medak would start on the first ledge to where he would end at the top. Wherever Medak would be in sight, he would be out of range of the slingshot. And at those same places, Ben would be an easy target for a gun. He realized slowly and bitterly that he could not stop Medak from climbing. He could not even harass him to slow him down. Ben looked across the ledge at the 20 feet above him. He studied it for a moment and then slowly looked back along his own ledge and on into the deep shadows of the tunnel. From the wide ledge toward which he was climbing, Medak could stand or even sit comfortably, his elbows wedged down against his legs from the support, and shoot him. Ben could see from one end of the dark tunnel to the other. Not even the bend in the tunnel was enough to conceal him. There was no place to hide. Ben went back along the ledge and into the tunnel to where the slingshot lay beside the little pile of stones he had gathered. The sound of the hammer seemed to beat against him as he sat beside the slingshot and idly fitted it into his hand. Ben was listening so intently to the hammer that it was a long time before he realized he had also been hearing the sound above him. It was a hollow, rattling, irritating noise. He ran to the mouth of the tunnel and looked up. The helicopter was like transparent gold floating in the sky, coming nearer and nearer. He could not make out the markings on it, but he was sure that it was the game and fish chopper on a routine patrol. It was the most beautiful thing Ben had ever seen in his life.